Many people lose their jobs due to reasons that are not related to their job performance. There are plants that are closing down, there are firms that are downsizing significantly, and many workers are losing their jobs in this process. Economic theory suggests that moving from one job to another one should be relatively smooth. But empirical research has documented that workers that lose their jobs tend to have long-lasting earning and employment losses. So the question that we have asked in our research with rich Finnish administrative data is that what are the consequences of job displacement on workers? And the Finnish administrative data is ideal setting to study this phenomenon because it has rich information on different outcomes of the workers, and we can follow individuals in different registers over time. We can even link individuals to their spouses or children. And this is important when we want to understand what are the consequences of job loss, because the consequences do not only affect the workers themselves, they can also affect spouses and other family members. So let me first show with this figure what happens to the workers that lose their jobs in plant closures in Finland. The blue line describes the earnings of the workers that lost their jobs. And the red line describes the earnings of workers that didn't lose their jobs. And with this figure, I can show that before the job loss, there's hardly no difference in the earnings of these two groups. While at the moment of job loss, the job losers have significantly lower earnings, and this gap in earnings remains throughout the whole study period, which is almost 20 years. Interesting question is that do these costs of job loss also affect other outcomes than labor market outcomes? And one question that we have studied in our research is that what does job loss do to your health? With this figure I show that when men lose their job, they have higher risk of dying in every single year since the job loss when compared to the workers that didn't lose their jobs. Interestingly, if we take the spouses of these men, we also find clear increases in their mortality. So the women of men who lost their jobs have a higher risk of dying throughout the study period than women of men who didn't lose their jobs. Our research also allows us to study whether there are any gender differences in the labor market impacts of job loss. And with the next figure, I'm showing what are the impact of women's job loss on her own health or own mortality. And while we just documented that for men, losing a job is really bad for your health, this is not the case when we are looking at women. For women, the risk of dying doesn't change at all after her job loss. And if we look at women's spouses, we don't see any difference in their mortality either. So to summarize, job displacement can have severe consequences on the workers that are affected. It reduces earnings and employment for a long time. It can also affect outcomes other than labor market outcomes, such as workers' health, and it can also postpone childbearing decisions. We also find that impacts of job loss don't only affect the workers themselves, but there's important spillover effects to spouses and to children. We just documented that spouses of men who lost their jobs are more likely to die. In other research, we have documented that children whose parents lose their jobs are reconsidering their study field decisions and are less likely to choose the same study fields than their parents have, than those children whose parents didn't lose their jobs. We also document really interesting gender asymmetry when we are studying the effects of job loss. We find that only men's job loss deteriorates the health of both spouses, while women's job loss has no impact on her own health, neither her spouse's health. Overall, these findings show that with the rich administrative data that Nordic countries have, that allows us to link individuals to their spouses and follow them in different registers, allow us to study questions that have not been previously studied. Thank you for listening.